Greeny, Brian McNichol.
Oh no, because I had clicked off the thing and I want
And I am ready now. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and our friends, the dog-faced phony soldiers.
That's right. I was trying to think. We need some more phrases in there. I was thinking about we probably doesn't quite fit, but we probably could. I guess we could throw in the ultra magas too or something.
Ultra magas, that's right.
Yeah.
What's funny about that one is, the reason they started calling us that is they did, focus groups and poll tested it, and they found, oh, that's one that'll really stick it to them. We're all like, hey, let's get ultra maga t-shirts. I want to be ultra maga.
And there was a story. I don't know if you saw this. I just happened to flip across it, where after Biden has said that, I mean, I guess the Trump people or the supporters, they went and they made ultra MAGA T-shirts and the whole thing.
That's
I mean, they've made a good made some good coin there selling these things. Kind of with the Superman, image and all this stuff. And
what that shows you though is they didn't ask anybody to the right of AOC what they thought of this, right? They got a bunch of lefties in a room and said, oh yeah, ultra mega makes us really mad. It's like the rest of the country's like, where do I sign up?
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that where the Democrats, the liberal lefties, kind of goofed up. They created something for our side that was that they had not intended to do. That they thought they had us yet again, and yet the tables have been turned once again.
Walls are closing in.
I was going to say, as I was watching you kind of get prepped before we started, this is like because I know my hair's grown over my ears a little bit, but it looks like it's time for you to get a haircut too.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, this is as long as my hair's been in a long, long time. So
yeah, I'm like, well, because your head was to the side at first. I'm like, whoa, Brian's hair is long.
Really long.
He might he get it out a little bit long. He can go into a man bun.
I will say that that's unlikely.
Yeah, I don't know. I think your kids would find it amusing.
That's part of why.
All right, now time for some real news. All right, so now we're up to 105 days, in Ukraine. Things are still slogging along there, and there's a lot of war words as well as the actual war on the ground. But I mean, what's your take on where are we going here? I mean, how much longer is this going to last to the end of the year or longer? I mean, what's going on here?
Well, my take is unfortunately that it does look like the Russians are applying the resources they need to turn the tide. The last week or so, the news has not been good for Ukraine. They've made a lot of progress in the south, and they seem to be settling for not taking every single inch of the country, but taking what it needs to get a land bridge to the Black Sea, and across the south to through Mariupol and so forth. And so, and it does look like they're going to be able to do that unless there's a big influx of arms and personnel.
Yeah, so it looked to me that they went from kind of that it's all or nothing scattershot approach to basically realizing that wasn't working, and then saying, okay, we're going to pull back, and then we're just going to be a little more concentrated, and then try to eat this up. Kind of go in there with more forces, more material, and we will have more firepower. Therefore, we will be able to have more success that way. And that does seem, unfortunately, to be having a negative effect in Ukraine in that sense. But Ukraine, they're doing what they can. I don't know.
Yeah, they've already been about 102 days more resilient than we thought they were going to be. So don't put it past them to rally and to retake some stuff and to do some things of their own. They're being resupplied by the West on a pretty regular basis. So it's not over, but the Russians, it was a good week for the Russians in Ukraine.
So will NATO ever step in, beyond that, beyond, material and things like that? Would you think they think this is enough of a threat that some of them they would actually start to send them some troops and to back these guys up?
I don't understand why they would not have already if they were going to. I guess it's possible, especially if if Putin, if he tries to, tactical nuke or something like that, then I think you could draw in the West in a combat role, more prominent than it already has. But other than that, I think it's, the game is the game right now.
Yeah. So we'll have to just kind of keep watching this. But yeah, as you said, it's about 102 days longer than the Russians definitely expected. So, and which I think is part of the reason I think Zelensky, I mean, Ukraine has rounded up so much Western support too. On top of that, is because they showed that they could stand up to them, and that there wasn't going to be this, flashbang. They were gone in 3 days or whatever, and obviously other countries out there have got their interests to protect. Seeing Russia do this, you're kind of like, well, could we be next? Maybe not, but do you want to take the chance? So,
right. And the other thing is, it's like our problem in Vietnam was that, so much of what we tried to do for them went down the corruption hole. It didn't make it to helping them, that, we reached the point where it wasn't productive to keep helping them. That's not really what, what's going on here. The Ukraine is putting the weapons in the field and using them. So, I mean, we're helping to the degree we can, and they're being, from what we understand, pretty responsible about what they've done with what we've sent them.
Right. Well, we'll just have to keep watching that and seeing, what happens here. It becomes, it still obviously plays on the world stage and affects a lot of things worldwide. Boris Johnson survived a vote of no confidence. I think the vote was 211 to 148 or something like that. They can't. Their party rule said that he can't face another vote for a year. But there were, I heard, rumblings that they would try to change the rules and everything like this. But I don't know. I mean, Boris seems to be somewhat weakened by this. Plus, they do have some elections coming up. They don't have to call for the big election until they have to do it by 2025. So he's got a little bit of time there if he wants to try to string that out. But the other local elections and things that will come up in between could start to tell the tale of exactly where his strength is. It does seem that the Labour Party is gaining some advantage right now at Boris's expense. So I don't know. I mean, you have some feelings about what's going on in the UK?
Well, the vote was only amongst Boris's party, right?
Right.
So the way it works over there, I guess the prime minister is elected is merely the party leader in parliament. So it'd be almost like the Speaker of the House here running the country. It's not quite totally analogous, but along those lines. So I think that the controversies died down. I think it's up to him. There's some stuff going on out there in the world where world leaders have a real opportunity here to make a name for themselves by effectively negotiating what's going on now. And, energy problems, trade problems, interruptions of supplies and so forth, inflation, a lot of problems caused by the United States and, ineptitude of our administration, and the war in Ukraine, which is also somewhat related to our administration. So, he's kind of depending on us, but he certainly has a chance now to survive and probably last for a while. He was in trouble for partying during the pandemic when other people weren't allowed to. I don't know how long people are going to stay angry about that.
Yeah, but I mean, politics overseas is fascinating, right? I mean, because it's a very other countries have a very different system from ours. By. And so, this parliamentary system creates some interesting things that go on there. And there's, it does kind of, there's a lot of shifts back and forth between the left, the left and the right, in places, particularly like in the UK. And scandals, the Brits, the Europeans, they love scandals. They love to make a lot
of
but
the shelf life of them is not that much. And it's not like Biden's problem, polling wise and whatnot, is that incompetence is sort of baked in now, right? We expect that he messed up the economy and can't fix it. he messed up the energy market and can't fix it. He messed up the border and can't fix it. So, it's harder for me to see what Biden does to like really strengthens his hand in the polls. But this is something that happened, some time ago, and like different things that we judge these people on, these candidates on, other than this, it's disappearing in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I mean, really, Johnson just needs just some good news, something really good to do, and that pushes that way to the back, because voters pretty much worldwide, I mean, it's their memory tends to be of the more recent things that happened in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months or whatever. This happened back in December, or whatever, or further back. I mean, it goes back a ways, during the height of the pandemic, I guess. So, but obviously the left will continue, the Labour Party will continue to hammer him on that, and I think people in the UK do shift their sentiments one way or the other. But, and as you said, I mean, Johnson is facing the same problems to a large degree that we have here with inflation and, dealing with energy prices and things like that. But I do have a hard time imagining really that the Labour Party can actually craft an effective message to tell them that they would be able to do anything better.
Right. He's not really in any danger of losing to Labor. His danger was losing the voted confidence of his own party.
Right. And so, part of this equation, I think, will be is that as these other kind of by-elections and other things that crop up that are part and parcel of how things work in the UK, is that if he starts losing party members, I mean, if they start getting turned out in some of these elections, then he's going to have a bigger problem, because his support starts to erode. I mean, he has fewer people in parliament. I mean, he needs those people, whether or not he just by a total count, they need those people, so he can't afford to, they can't afford to lose too many as these other elections take place. Otherwise it does force another situation there. But,
but everybody but him is standing on the record of the Conservative Party versus Labor, right? I mean, you could go after him personally about this, but most of the leadership is not involved in this, right? So, it's a little bit harder to make the case that the party is decayed in some way because of this.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, if you have some of these local small elections where there's only a handful of people up for a re-election, but the Labour Party has made an effective argument that the Conservatives are out of touch or they're not good, it wouldn't be hard in some smaller elections to just flip those. And then all of a sudden, you start just chipping away at the Conservatives, majority, to where it becomes a little more tenuous for them. I mean, you need the majority to be able to form the majority government. Otherwise, you're forced into what has happened before, where they've had coalition governments which are shaky. I mean, look what happened in Israel.
I'll tell you something on that one. When people here gripe about the two-party system. Two-party system is like the guy said about democracy. Churchill, I guess. It's not very good, but it's better than all the rest. Because you get into those third parties, you're making these coalitions. It's really hard to govern. Like Israel right now is run by a coalition of the far right, the far left, and some other rando party, right?
Right.
So it's like, where does this guy go for support? What is it he can harness his support to do?
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, Israel is, to me, one of the prime examples of how the two-party system for us works so much better, because how many they had to keep having elections because they couldn't form a government, right? And then they finally did it, but they did it by the skin of their teeth. I mean,
and just a real rando,
right?
That's not a lasting coalition, right? That's not enduring.
It's so thin.
Voters.
Right. It's so thin that when those people from kind of the fringy parts of that government, that coalition, they change their mind or something happens, the government collapses. I mean, they are really
you have extremists of both ends, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're not dealing with the people who regularly negotiate and make deals in the middle, right? You're dealing with the people at the far end, the least likely to be able to participate, really contribute to a coalition.
Yeah. And so I think you were kind of alluding to, the thing too is that when you have a government like that and you don't have you don't have the clear majority. You're not. This is not your party really in the majority ruling with a and then trying to get the others to come along on, say, certain policies, but you actually have to hold these guys together, 4 or 5, whatever, different parties together to keep it going. How much can you do? How much of your agenda, could you accomplish? Because you've got all these people that are saying, we want to be a part of this government, but as soon as you go the other way or you shouldn't do something we don't like, we're not voting for it. It's the completely ineffective government at that point.
Yeah, what is it you have a mandate to do?
Right.
What is it people elected the far right and far left to do? I don't know, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting, the European style of doing these things. It's my wife was commenting when she was watching, kind of reading the news about Boris. She's like, well, why don't we have something like this? It's just like, no, we don't want something like this.
I like the idea. Like, it would be good to be able to have a recall, in Congress. Hey, can we vote Biden out now? Right?
That was her point.
Else, because I think most Americans now realize that was, not prudent to put this guy in as our president. Right? It's not working at all. But we have some stability with what we have, and we have ways to deal with it pretty quickly. And after November, he probably won't get a whole lot done with Congress because he won't control either house.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that was really her point, is just that seeing that, that it was possible for Johnson to lose his position as the head of the party, and therefore as the prime minister. She's just like, why can't we do this with Biden?
But it's really not the better way. It seems like it would be right now, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, for now it would be very nice and convenient, but in the long run, it's just not the best way for us.
They'd have been trying to do this to Trump every 5 minutes,
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, and you can't run a government, we cannot run our government like that, with that kind of hanging over our head all the time. You just get disgruntled and whatever. So, I'm fascinated by
the right sees that. So, but the left, you remember their whole strategy with Trump was to keep it embroiled in scandal, even though he didn't do anything. The whole of the time he was president. So I mean, not enough gets said about like the Russia hoax. That's basically 2 years of Trump's presidency. All he could do. And they twice, abused the impeachment mechanism in the Constitution to make political hay about ridiculous things, right? I mean, we went through the country goes through a lot when that happens, and Congress has to stop what it's doing and deal with this. And that was about a year and a half or 2 years, another year and a half or 2 years wasted, so that Democrats could play politics.
Right. I mean, the Steele dossier. I mean, it's
every bit fake. Nothing proven that you couldn't get out of a newspaper. And the whole thing.
And as soon as it's proven fake, the news media loses interest in it, right? They don't care.
No, they still treated it as true. I mean, they still treat.
But I mean, they don't.
It's not all been disproven. It's like, it has.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. My thing here is just that the last thing they want to report on is just the fact that it's been debunked. So they're trying everything they can to say that to avoid that if they can, in this regard. So it's just it's funny. I mean, it suited their purposes when they thought they had was going to go against Trump, but now that we've had this time and it says no, it's completely fake. Hillary Clinton basically said let's go with it, okay, and all this stuff. There are no real repercussions for them,
right,
in the end.
Right.
So since you brought it up, and January 6th committee, talk about primetime folly. Unbelievable. I mean, it's like, I've always said, and I think we both agreed that this whole thing has just been it has been kind of that whole witch hunt's been ridiculous. It's a complete waste of time and money. And now they're going to go to the hearings in prime time. I mean,
they've hired some TV exec to like gussy it up for them and make it look
right. Yeah, it's supposed to, this is a hearing where you've hired a producer.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know what we need to know, right? It's what's he there for? Dramatic effect, right? Because As Denver Riggleman, who hates Trump, right, who's dropped out of the Republican Party over his opposition to Trump and all things Trump, ran for Congress, lost out of Congress because of his opposition to all things Trump, dedicated his life to Trump hatred, says there's no smoking gun. They don't have anything that says Trump was trying to overthrow the government or stop the transition of power or anything like that. They don't have it. It's not in their wheelhouse. They don't, that evidence was not gathered. And, and yet they're still pressing forward trying to make that happen.
I realize that the Democrats are desperate because, November is going to be.
Because Jamie Raskin's involved.
Yeah.
But anyway, but enough about bad hair days.
Yeah. This just seems almost the ultimate in desperation from the Democrats. November is going to be a complete disaster for them. And it's as if the Democrats are thinking like, okay, we really haven't gotten very far with this committee to date. We've spent a lot of time and effort on it. So now we'll put it in front of America in prime time and see if we can't get some traction for it and try to sway people back to our side and distract them from the bigger issues of the day. Realistically, it's like, how many people really care about this now?
Right. That's right. It's like it is. Past prime, if you'd done it 6 months ago, you might have gotten a little more hook on it. They tried to save this as something to sort of, buttress electoral fortunes, but, the opinion of the Biden administration is baked in. And that opinion is that it's incompetent, that it brought a lot of its problems on itself, that it doesn't have a clue how to fix them. Right. That's what the polling shows. You ask the questions, do you trust their handling of the economy, their ability to turn things around? Those are the worst numbers Biden gets. Like it's down below 20% think that he can turn it around. So when you have that, it's baked in that they're going to get slaughtered. And they either have the all-time, not 2,000 mules, but 200,000 mules lined up for this, or they're going to get pummeled, and they know it. So, they can throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. They can, they're trying to just turn over the apple cart and start again, with things like this hearing and, the abortion outrage and now the gun outrage and so forth. So, it's just throw stuff. It's just desperation at this point, but it's not going to matter because people don't vote on that stuff. They vote on the economy. They vote on how the country's doing and feeling. And those statistics could not be a whole lot worse for Biden.
Yeah. As I was saying, it's kind of a distraction from some of the problems that the administration is mired in on the one hand. On the other hand, if you're the administration and you're watching the Democrats do this, which is not going to help them in November, may even make the situation worse in some people's eyes. It's like, wouldn't you try to maybe advise them, say, maybe this isn't really the best idea. You can go ahead and continue with the committee, but, hiring the producer, going into prime time,
who's the consumer here? Who are they trying to reach? Right. Yeah. It's their base is to keep because the things they're looking at is these surveys that say, are you enthused about voting? And Republicans are, they were 15 ahead before the Roe thing leaked. And then it was like 14 ahead. And after the gun stuff broke, it's like, back to 15 ahead. So, they've made next to no progress on that. So that's what this is a way to, it's a long bomb. You're going to see a lot of this between now and November.
Yeah, and then we have, like Fox News says, we're not carrying it, and so Brian Stelter, a bunch of liberals, they're all mad, about this. They think this is terrible, this is horrible, and all this kind of stuff. But I seem to recall that there were things that that Trump did or other Republicans have done where MSNBC or something, they would cover it.
Yeah, they made a big deal about not covering the coronavirus press conferences, right? Yeah. Because about a month into them, the networks said, this is boring and stupid. Everybody hates it. They did polling. Wow, it's really popular. people like hearing every day. What are we doing about this, right? And yeah, some of the information was not, they had to go walk it back or change it or whatever. But, they were doing this in real time, and you got to hear an update from the top guy. And it ended up being those press conferences. It eventually kind of fizzled out.
Yeah.
But for a long time, they were really popular. And, so this is the Democrats, counter to that.
Yeah. It's like Fox News has every right to make that decision, just like MSNBC or the others had right. They can make their decisions. I mean, we don't have to agree with them, but they're, the government doesn't control the media, and the government, no one should force them to carry, these things. It's up to them if they. I don't know that carrying that thing would have helped Fox News from a rating standpoint. In the meantime, what's going to happen is that they will air their regular programming, and they'll probably just wipe the mat, with the other liberal cable networks who are covering it, because people are like, well, this is dumb. Why do I want to watch this? I mean, they may even tuned into Fox News, something like that, just to see some real news.
Well, they might lose the first night.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Fox loses the first night, right? But
just for people's curiosity.
Yeah, but once you watch it, you're like, okay, this is partisan sniping. The thing that we have to remember is this does animate the D base, right? They are excited about this, and they really think that they're close to a big breakthrough, and indictments and people in shackles. They've already gotten Peter Navarro, which is just ridiculous. I mean, how do you put that guy in shackles? You call him and you say, come down to the station, and he comes down to the station, right? That's the way those things are always dealt with. But when Republicans get back in power, one of the things they need to do is make sure that anytime they're arresting somebody, it is 6 a.m. and there's FBI and SWAT teams, and make it as embarrassing and humiliating as possible, because that is what was done to them for no reason at all. That particular act of intimidating the people by trying to embarrass them needs to be retaliated against directly, fully, frontally, as soon as possible.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't think much is going to come of this. You're right. I mean, the base is going to get, they'll get animated because this is red meat for them, but they're not going to excite much beyond the base. So
I want to say one more thing before we go. So Peter Navarro's case, right, revolves around, can he be compelled to give up supposedly privileged communications between him and the president to discuss what him and the president talked about? Okay, first of all, he has defied a subpoena from Congress. It appears to be like a criminal proceeding committee, right? What are they doing? They're investigating what they consider to be a crime, right? They're not making bones about that. That's what they're doing. Congress doesn't have the power to investigate crime, right? Congress can investigate. It can oversee legislation, right? We approve this program. What's going on with this program, and they can hold hearings and subpoena people to gather information for legislation they're considering. This doesn't fall into either one of those categories. So they're not, considering legislation. They have not even made that argument. So I don't see how they can hold Navarro in contempt, and punish him in any way for this. So, I expect that, quietly, and you won't see that story in the media, but quietly, it'll go away. They'll get rid of it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this turns out, just like a lot of other things. But it's going to be, I mean, in some ways, depending on how many I didn't look to see, did they say how many nights this is going to take or whatever? I mean,
it's 3.
Okay, so it's not not a high risk proposition for MSNBC to cover it, because these guys, their ratings aren't that great
anyway. CNN is better, right?
Yeah, they're right. They might actually improve their ratings to a certain degree. So, especially with all the turmoil that CNN has. But yeah, I mean, so it's not a high risk.
Turmoil. How about that old Washington Post? Holy cow!
Right. All right, this wasn't on there, but since you brought it up, bring it up.
So they were So Dave Weigel, who's longtime reporter / columnist for the Washington Post, who's had some ethical and factual problems himself over the years, right? But someone put on Twitter, all women are bi. You just have to find out if it's sexual or polar. And that was it. That's just it's a joke, and it's kind of a sexist joke, whatever. So he retweeted it. He didn't tweet it. He just retweet. Yeah. So this other reporter, Felicia Somnes, who has positioned herself as the keeper of all things PC for the Post, right? Says that's totally misogynistic, and you need to take it down. And so he said, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry," and I take it down and writes a "I'm sorry," tweet. Hey, people might think this is me as being a misogynist and hating women, but nothing could be farther from the truth. And they suspended him for a month without pay anyway. And then she went back and dumped on this other guy who said, who came in and said, who is a Hispanic, gay, something. He was in 3 minorities, and he's like, you don't understand the minority, what it's like to be. The guy's like, well, I kind of do, because, I'm all these things. And all she was saying, all the guy said was, maybe we should, you should just send an email to Dave instead of publicly humiliating him, on Twitter. Oh, no, you just don't understand. We got to stand for what's right and all this stuff. So, I don't know what they're going to do. And the head, Sally Busby, came out and sent everybody a thing and said, settling this in-house is probably the way we should be going. So, something's going to happen with Felicia Somnes, but I kind of can't wait to see. They got some real pieces of work there. I'm trying to figure out who's doing the hiring, because, the drive to be more politically correct than everyone in the world is not really working out for them too well.
Yeah, I mean, to put it out on Twitter, I mean, it just totally blew up their newsroom, and a total distraction for them and everything like this. Yeah, I know Dave Weigel. I mean, I've known him for a long time, really, since he was first kind of writing for it was like a very small independent type of a thing. It was on the web and all this stuff. I mean, he covered some AIM things and things like that. And I still remember him talking to me after we were at an AIM conference. He wanted to know more about my father, and my father's still around at the time, but more about my father and the whole Vince Foster thing. And so, he had an angle, he had an agenda. We knew it. And he would go to the Heritage Foundation, the bloggers briefing run by Rob Louie. So he was around, and he was a known quantity.
And I disagree with him on stuff, but I will say that, unlike most Post reporters, he does go get stories, right?
Yeah.
He does. There's some hustle to it.
Yeah. So I don't, I'm pretty neutral on him. I don't really have a big thing about him one way or the other, but I do have for people who, this always annoys me when you retweet somebody. Then you be all of a sudden, in this day and age, you are now responsible. You are treated as if you had actually written the tweet. If you tweet something now and 15 years later somebody says, "Oh, that was sexist and misogynistic," you have to answer to that. I mean,
that's right.
It's absolutely nuts that the time frame and all the things that give the tweets and whatever any kind of relevance. Are just kind of give you that whole idea of like frame it in its proper time and thing goes out the window. It doesn't matter. I mean, Somnes, I mean, she's offended. Yes, right. Rather than write Dave, send him an email, which is pretty easy to do. She decides to make this a public thing on Twitter, and only makes it worse for everybody in the end. It's just, and the Post gets they've been pilloried for this. I mean, she's gotten hit pretty hard, which deservedly so.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. I don't, the Post, as much as I have disdain for the Post, I understand the last thing they want to do is have like these little disputes being aired in public for everybody to see. They could solve this in-house. And as you said, they suspended Weigel for a month without pay.
Right. People are like, well, that's not really fired him. It's like, you live a month without pay, right? Yeah. You just have zero money coming in for a month and see what it does to your life. Right, because I've had it, and I can tell you it's not good.
Yeah, so it's just I don't know. I don't know what it is. Can we say it's these, the media elites that just don't understand the others or something? It's just
Well, the
amazing.
joy, the thing that strikes me about it is like the joy taken from creating this strife, right? From accusing people of this and making them defend and putting everybody on their heels. That seems to be the goal, right? And it's like the goal is not to get the speech right or to, say, hey, that might have been a little too cruel. I mean, I wouldn't think so, but if others do, you want to have that discussion, The goal was to be seen as the person who campaigned for this, who made this happen, who caused this pain for Dave Weigel.
Right. And for her, I mean, if the Post had fired Weigel over that after her comment, I mean, then she's like, hey, look, I'm the
freaking editor of the Post then, right? You better run everything by Felicia or you're not going to have a job.
Right. And it's like, I'm the champion. You better watch out for me because I can make or break you, and she could parlay that into whether or not it's the Post or some other newspaper. It's like, I make things happen. May not be correct, but she made things happen. But it's that PC mentality that goes on there. I mean,
it's terror. That's what terrorism is, right?
Yeah. I mean, Twitter is a cesspool. The media loves it, nevertheless. But stuff like this happens, and it seems to be, these kinds of arguments happen with regularity, whether or not it's with the media themselves or with other people's, sports, other, celebrities, things like that. They use that as their platform, and then you get all kinds of stuff that goes on as a result of that. Anyway, elections. So we had some more primaries yesterday. Not a lot of surprising things going on there, but California was interesting because Karen Bass, who, months and months and months ago looked like, okay, hey, I'm a black representative in Congress. I'm going to run for mayor of LA. It's a very liberal city. That looked like a guaranteed thing for her. And then comes this guy Caruso, who had been a Republican at one time, but switched to the Democrat Party. But I think more because he realized he can't get elected as a Republican.
Right. That's basically all it was. And he switched like just a few months ago.
Yeah. So he switched, and he put a lot of money behind it. And he came up with like 41%. And I think she had 37%. And so there's a runoff. You have to win the majority. There'll be a runoff. Obviously liberals are, saying, well, it's the money that got him there. But is he, there? I've seen people comparison of this to when Richard Riordan, a businessman, won and became the mayor of LA, trying to clean things up. And Caruso's been kind of on that law and order type of a thing there because these liberal cities have had a problem. I mean, they've got a guy there who's their attorney general, he's been just, he doesn't believe in actually putting people in jail or criminal, actually prosecuting a lot of people.
Setting bail or anything.
Yeah.
So,
and he's in trouble because they need 566,000 valid signatures by July 6th to force a recall in November. And they're at 500,000 right now. I don't know how many are valid, but I mean, they've got just about a month to go. I think they make it. And I think a recall is possible.
Recall, the guy in San Francisco was recalled last night.
Yeah, for which their response was, once again, it's kind of the right wing. All they far outspent us and everything like this, but no mention of the fact that
this was done by Democrats. There's no Republicans responsible for this. This was all run. The organization is run by Democrats.
There are businesses even run by liberals in San Francisco who are just like, we can't take this anymore. I mean,
you got to protect property. That's the only job of government. It's not to protect you. That's what Second Amendment is for you to protect you. The government's job is to protect property. It really doesn't have another purpose. If it's not going to protect property, we shouldn't have a government. We shouldn't pay them a dime, right? Because that's their thing. So, I think the people of San Francisco, got tired of seeing things get worse and people not care. And I think that one thing that really made the difference there was the people going into stores and just emptying the contents of the store into a bag and walking out, knowing that the store can't do anything, and the cops are told not to do anything, and even if they catch the guy, they're not allowed to put him in jail or keep him in jail, right? And the same people just keep getting out and doing the same stuff, right? And they're what got the shot across the bow last night was San Francisco, because they're telling you, a very, very blue liberal city is not going to take it anymore. So if I was Karen Bass, I would get myself to the law and order side of this argument, because the other side was tested in a more liberal city than Los Angeles last night and found and rejected. The other guy, he seems to be saying that he wants to clean up housing encampments, and he has a bunch of ideas along those lines. Make sure criminals go to jail and so forth. So we're back to putting the criminals in jail, right? Because every few years we try the opposite and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens. I mean, because like I said, I'm pretty sure that the opponents of Gascon, they've rounded up 500,000 signatures in LA to recall him. They're probably going to meet the minimum even after throwing out whatever, because there's always going to be some invalid signatures for one reason or another. But then you've got Gascon, he's going to be sitting there thinking like, holy cow, I've got about 4 months to convince the people that I deserve to stay in office and keep my job. Will he start to change his tune a little bit? Say, here, I'm, show what he's going to do in the next couple of months to say, I understand now. Okay, it's like, and he's going to have Boudin in his rear view of having been recalled and saying, okay, voters are serious. When you can come into these blue cities and you can go and you can throw out a liberal prosecutor like that, then you're like, okay, maybe these policies are not the best policies. That letting criminals off the hook and letting them destroy property and there's no consequences to a lot of these actions is not the best thing in the world. There has been that big movement going from the whole bail reform to all of these things that have created loads of problems in cities across America, and the liberal left, the progressives, think that this is the solution. But just look around. Look at all the properties being destroyed. This, like you said, all these kind of smash and grabs are just people walking in and walking out with very little recourse, because there's no one to stop them, and there's no one to prosecute them and throw them in jail and make them pay a penalty for that.
Right. So that you can't sell property, you can't sell things in that environment, right? You have to close your store, which is a thing that's happening. Right.
So we'll have to wait and see. Now, I don't know what gas prices are over where you are, but I mean, we're obviously seeing them. If you're seeing them go up as fast as we are here in the Montgomery County side of things, but it is just, it's insane. It's more insane than I can remember in a long time, where you just feel that, if you get down a quarter of a tank, if you're by a gas station, go buy some more gas, because chances are it's going to be 5 cents, 10 cents higher, in a few days or something like that. And people, we saw there was a story out in what was a Mendocino, California, where there's a little station that is already in the 9s, at this point in time, which I was waiting for the other part of the story was like, so what happens when it goes to $10 and the pump can't handle the $10, because they didn't imagine to go above $9.99. And then how do they price the gas at that point?
That's like the worst thing I've heard all day. That's just terrible that they can't go over $10 a gallon.
Well, I kept looking. I was looking at the story because I was looking at the pictures of this little station. So the operator buys the gas from Chevron, so it's a Chevron branded station, but they don't have they don't have a big snack, food and drink like a lot of others. The more Chevron, there's an independent operator, so they don't make money off of food and drink. So that was part of the excuse for them, is that they make their gas is high because it's the only way they make money. They can't shave the margins on the gas and try to make it up on the food and drink because they don't have any. So it's all about making it on the gas that they sell. So that's that. But I was looking in the pictures that the newspaper or the local station was talking about. I don't see any electronic signboard. So at least on that part, I get, they can have a signboard where they can just flip it manually to go over $10 or whatever. But the gas pumps are going to be a little more problematic for them at this point. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you. But that's a mechanical issue. That's kind of this thing that's going to happen. California is going to see this, right? More of California. I mean, we're seeing our friends post $6, $7 gas in California.
Yeah.
Who in the heck can afford this?
Yeah, and it's going to get worse because there's not going to be any offshore oil drilling after the end of this month. I mean, no one's paying attention to that, but they don't have you have to have this plan in place, and the plan expires June 30th, and they said they're going to start work on the new one on June 30th. So, that thing's not going to happen in one day. I mean, July 1st, you won't be authorized to drill offshore of the U.S. So you think it's bad now? It's nothing compared to when you take away all the offshore. And he doesn't want to. He wants to leave office with no more offshore. Right? He said that. He's like, we're going to stop it. We're going to keep it stopped, and it's never going to exist again.
So it's
there's not an accident. People need to understand. It's like, oops, wow, the prices. They don't care. At the very least, they don't care. And at the most, they're actively for it to be high to make you. I saw you posted the other day. I'm going to think about giving up my car. Right? That's where they're going on this. It's like, let's make people give up their cars.
Well, and that was the thing. I was being somewhat facetious about that because I can never imagine giving up my car, right? I mean, it's an extra expense in some ways, but my wife and I don't have the same schedule, so revolving around one car would just be hard. I mean, it wouldn't be impossible, but it's not something I'm willing to do yet. But I thought I was really kind of fascinated by the number of responses from people on Facebook who talked about that's the agenda. That's they want you to go there and do that. And, it really hadn't crossed my mind that much. I was just kind of throwing it up there. I'm just throwing a bunch of ideas up there these days, and it was interesting to see that how many people really felt that this is part of a bigger thing. And then you have the tone deafness of Debbie Stabenow, who says, "I don't have to worry about gas prices. I drive an electric car."
Yeah, I finally bought one, and finally got enough money to, I drove it down here right past all those expensive gas stations, and I'm like, I don't think that hit like you think it did, girlfriend. But
what an elitist type of a thing to
do. Just let them eat cake, like
yeah.
Look, I don't know if it's worse, her or the interior lady, right? It's like they're doing this thing, or they're Joe Manchin's discovering this in hearings. Like, what? You're doing what? The lady's like, well, we're not sure about. She's looking back at the aides and everything, and it's like, this is what y'all are cooking up, right? This guy just happened to notice. Joe Manchin is doing, for a Democrat, like, we're not on here to like pump up the Democrats a whole lot, but he's saving us. It could be the country could be in much worse shape if it was not for that guy.
Yeah, so I posted the article from the Wall Street Journal, which I don't know half the time. I don't bother to look actually when I post some of these things, whether or not they're protected or not. Some of them are behind a paywall. Sometimes they're not. But it was the road trip that one of the reporters took with a friend of hers, kind of using an EV, and she rented, I think, a Kia, EV of some sort, and they took this trip, and I hadn't really, I think I knew about it really in the back of my mind, having some friends of ours that drove from California out here last August, and the number of stops they had to make in their Tesla, but the Tesla tells you where all their superchargers are. That's part of the process. They tell you where you can go, but the number of problems these two had in getting the car charged, it was comical. I mean, they'd go to a place. Some of them are dealers. I think they even went to a Kia dealer, and the Kia dealer, the service department wasn't sure about it. They said, go to the front desk, and the front desk says, well, that's a service issue. Send them back over there. And then they figured out where it was and things like this. And then the level, the speed of the charging, which has been something that people don't understand, is that charging a vehicle, unless you're like a Tesla supercharger, can take a long time. And they found huge variances in the chargers that were available at different places. Some would take hours and hours and
You
hours.
can't stop for 2 hours in the middle of a trip to gas up. I mean, what they're asking is
and they're
ridiculous.
sitting there trying to map this thing out, and they're like, okay, we can't get there.
Yeah,
It was really rough. It is, in essence, if you're trying to go cross country or whatever, a long road trip, the EV, we're not there. I mean, and Joe Biden wants to electrify America, but there's a whole nother issue. I mean, how are you going to do this? How do you incentivize people to do it? How much is this really going to cost? This is not going to be carbon neutral, right? There's going to be a
it's
footprint.
worse. It's a 30% less efficient engine, and the material to make the big battery, and most of the cars are like a 1,400-pound battery, right? That's most what a Tesla is. It is, that's way worse than pumping oil. Rare earth minerals that you have to get out of the ground. That's far worse than pumping oil.
Yeah. So I don't know. I found it amusing because I think that was a very realistic, experience by this reporter and her friend, and her friend was on a deadline because she had some kind of waitress shift somewhere that she had to be back by, and she barely got back in time to make her shift. I mean, they ran into so many different issues of trying to get the car charged enough so that they could actually make it from one location to another. So we'll have to see how that all rolls out. All right, we're out of time. So last word.
I wanted to say a couple of things. One is about Ilya Shapiro. So, Ilya Shapiro is a Cato Institute guy. He went to work in the law school at Georgetown as a professor. He's a very credentialed, respected guy, academic, longtime academic. They fired him for what they considered insensitive tweets. Then he repealed it and he got his job back. But when they gave him his job back, they said, if anybody complains about you, we're going to fire you, right? So of course, he's like, I can't work. If you're telling me to tell people what I think, then I can't work under that kind of constraint. And he quit. So Georgetown is hyper politically correct, hyper woke institution, far beyond anything that the Catholic Church ought to be paying for. Also, Tampa Bay Rays made a little news this week on one thing they joined with the Yankees. They were playing the Yankees. The Yankees have a big presence in Florida, in Tampa. Actually, it's where Yankees like spring training is. They agreed when they were playing to devote, instead of covering the game on their social media, Joe Smith just hit a home run, here's the home run. They decided to spend a night talking about gun control, gun grabbing in the wake of the Uvalde shooting. And so shortly after that, DeSantis said he was not going to approve money for a new spring training complex for them in Florida, right? So, DeSantis is the rare conservative politician who's willing to punish people who go woke against them. And so he has punished them. They also had a Pride night, and where the players were all given Pride insignias on their uniforms. 5 pitchers, in fact, opted not to do it because it violated their faith. A lot of other people in baseball criticized them, but they, stood up for what they believe.
Yeah. So I have my comments on that are good for DeSantis in the sense of zeroing out and not funding the stadium. I mean, so my personal thing is I hate the public financing of stadiums. These owners, they've got plenty of money. They can do this and they will make plenty of money. You don't need the taxpayer subsidy to do this. I really kind of hate this kind of thing. Why put it on the taxpayers? You're good. You're charging them all kinds of things anyway. The owners are going to get their share. They have benefited greatly over the last several decades from these taxpayer financed stadiums all over the country. So I'm not a big fan of that. I do think that DeSantis targeting them though on the whole thing where they turn their tweets, their Twitter feed into the gun thing and saying, kind of tying it to that. I think you need to separate it. I don't agree with the Yankees or the Rays doing that, but that is a corporate decision that they made, and they have the right to do that. Then you can just not go to a game or whatever. Don't buy any Rays merchandise or Yankee merchandise or whatever. But in general, good for that. On the Rays thing, yeah, the criticism has been interesting because there's so many people out there says, well, we think what they should have done was that they should have made wearing this mandatory, and I don't think I don't agree with that at all. I think that this is people, they're getting criticized for this. I mean, all these liberal sportscasters and like sorry, look, what is wrong with them standing up for this? Because this Pride Month thing has been just made to where there's like a gun put to your head that you must cooperate with this, you must celebrate. And even if you don't agree with it on a faith-based basis, you have to go along with this. Well, why can they not say, look, my Christian faith says no, I don't support that. Look, I'm okay with them, they don't bother me, whatever, but don't force me to wear something that says I support this. Not out of bounds. And I think I'm glad that the Rays didn't force them to do it, but then you had Jack Flair. You had some of the Rays players criticize them for doing it. It's like, no, they should have that right. I mean, we've seen so much social justice activism, where it's also like you have to go along with this, otherwise you're going to be, no.
I don't. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's also way too much politics into the sport.
I agree with that.
Right. So anyway. The soapbox on sports and trying to get all this garbage that they're trying to throw in there on that. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you again next